Welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I'm your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen. Hello everybody, welcome back to Coffee and Geography. I am talking to someone I've actually been on a podcast before, but not my own podcast, and I haven't actually been on hers yet. We might have to rectify that at some point, but
Yep.
Anne-Marie Organ, nice to speak to you again.
And you, yes. Good to be talking about geography rather than Star Trek.
Our connection is through that lovable rogue, Andy Placides, who's up there in space in the Great Derelict.
Yep.
So that's how we know each other through that sci-fi podcast, and how we've had chats on that before. But you also run your own podcast as well, don't you?
Yes, the BOrgCast, which does various different iterations of Star Trek, and has also veered off. And at one point, we were doing Borg Rogers, which was Buck Rogers, because we like a bit of 70s cheese.
We do indeed. Oh no! Now you know what I've got in my head now. I've got in my head now.
The worst one was the female one. Went booty, booty, booty.
Yeah, it's not sexist or anti-feminist at all.
No,
anyway,
not at all.
But to introduce you, Anne-Marie is an inclusive Christian geek podcaster, mother of two, Londoner, Franciscan. Is it Francis? Is that how you pronounce it? Franciscan?
Yeah.
Cool. Beer and coffee drinker, although not at the same time. And this is I might have to pick up on this a bit later. Rural-phobic.
Yep.
I've never heard that term before.
I possibly made it up.
But we probably will have to come back to that, especially when we talk about where you're located. But before we move on, Anne-Marie, let's talk a bit about what kind of stuff you drink, particularly when you're on your podcast. Do you have a set drink that you go to, a warm mug of something?
So if we're doing our podcast, it usually requires alcohol to have watched the stuff. So that's usually cider or real ale. But if I'm talking about things that don't require alcohol or don't require watching, then I tend to drink in the evenings green tea. So I have got Clipper. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm drinking.
Aha! Clipper organic green tea.
Yeah, that was my typical choice. Just slurps to that as I was preparing for our chat. Yeah, the Clipper green tea. Yep. Cool. Nice little detox at this time of the evening, because we're chatting in the evening.
Yep.
We just sent my eldest up to bed, so we can have our chat. Oh, brilliant, good. So a little bit of detox for both of us in the evening. And going on to your location then. So you're located in South London.
Yes, Catford,
South London. So we'll go a bit geographical here. I've just so I've got my Google Maps here, and I'm just looking at the huge number of settlements that have been swallowed by the London conurbation.
Yeah.
So let's see how many of them can you name. So obviously where you are right now, what else have we got in your local area?
Downham.
So we got Downham, yeah. We got
Forest Hill, Bellingham.
Croydon's not too far away from you, I guess.
Yeah, then you've got Sydenham's not that far. That's where Sainsbury's is.
Thornton Heath.
Okay, you've got Thornton Heath, Norbury, South Norwood, Crystal Palace, Gypsy Hill.
Crystal Palace, yep.
My mum lives in Chislehurst.
Okay.
Elmstead Woods, Mottingham, Eltham. I used to live in Welling. And before that I lived in Abbey Wood, which is near Thamesmead, although I don't know that Thamesmead existed because I think that was a new town. But Abbey Wood did, because the school that my son went to when he was really little was called Delucy School, after some Lord Delucy, somebody, and he owned all the area all around there. Because there was one of those information plaques on these. There's like a wood, and it's a nice wood, and then these ruins that are, there's really not much of it left, so it's more information plaque than ruin. And yeah, one of those. But I did actually pick up one time we were walking the dogs there. I did actually pick up a flint axe head, and I've got that.
Really?
Yep, and I've got it on my my bedroom windowsill.
Now, okay, I did react with a bit of surprise there because you're like, okay, the middle of South London you picked up, but then again, you know, I led into this particular part of the conversation by saying these are old settlements that have been swallowed up by
Yep.
urban growth, and of
Yep.
course you're going to find stuff like that if you're looking for them. Um, yeah, because I mean, London for me is an absolute fascinating place. So my well, not my personal stomping grounds, but my family background is the other side of the river, in East London. So Stratford, Mile End, Stepney, and all that kind of area. So yeah, and all of these places, of course, they were their own little settlements before
Mm.
London just grew and grew and grew. And what's really interesting is that whenever I speak to people about London, is that how that each little bit has its own particular character. So
Yeah.
where you are in South London, is there anything about it where you are which has its own distinctive character compared to everything else around it, or is it the same as everywhere else where it was its own little village that had its own little church, got swallowed up, inbuilt in between, has maybe a tube stop if you're lucky, or a train link if you're lucky, and it's the same as any other place in London, or does it have some kind of unique character to it?
I would say that where we are, the bit of Catford we're in is quite unusual in terms of the amount of green space within such a short walk from my front door. I'm used to there being green space around me in London. There's more than a lot of people realise. But
Yep.
if you go out my front door and walk in pretty much a straight line, you get to somewhere called Beckenham Place Park, which is the biggest park in the whole of South East London. It's huge. It's lovely. And there's these people who do that cold water swimming thing that I just
Oh,
make.
nice.
Yeah, I just think they're mad. There was one time when it was really, really cold. I actually saw, because they also do like boating and stuff, like canoeing or kayaking and paddleboarding and stuff on this lake. And I saw a woman get an oar from like a paddleboard or kayak, use it to bash the ice, and then go and have a swim.
Yeah, not for me.
No, no, me neither. But yeah, that's a lovely park. And if you have a dog, they've got these little sort of shops and a little cafe thing up by the manor house, and they sell doggy ice cream.
Oh, okay.
So, and very nice hot chocolate. So I have a hot chocolate, and dog has ice cream.
Oh, well, there you go. So there you go.
Um,
So there it is. It can be cultured in these places, folks. So, and also you've got is it a tributary of the Thames, a little
yes,
river
Ravensbourne.
stroke stream called the Ravens? Yeah, that's it, the
Yeah.
Ravensbourne.
And then
Yeah.
if I go out round the back of me and I go up a hill to another really nice park, it's called Forster's Memorial Park, and it was a park that was founded deliberately as a green space by the guy who was effectively like the Lord of the Manor originally. And that's just that's smaller, and that's more the sort of green space I'm used to. But I'm
Mm,
also not used to having a choice of two, if you see what I mean. That's just sort of,
yeah.
one direction is one big park and the other direction is another very big one. And we also have the laughable home base. I don't know whether you can bring this up on Google, but opposite our house is home base, and somebody decided that it ought to look like Crystal Palace, which is sort of vaguely in the area, but not that close. We don't know why somebody thought home base should look like Crystal Palace.
Is this
But
the
and then it's
London
got a little
Catford
lake in
one?
front of it with a statue of Peter Pan, but this little lake in Inverted Commas is mostly full of shopping trolleys, although it does have a few ducks and a heron. And it's just the whole the whole side of the thing is just like, what is this? Um, but yeah, because
Yeah, I've got it. I see
obviously,
it. Yeah.
yeah, um,
Yeah. For folks, so folks who are from my neck of the woods who look like, it kind of looks a little bit like the Millennium Forum here in Norwich, but sort of. But yeah, I can see what you mean. It's like it's got a glass kind of like archy domey kind of thing on the
yeah,
top of it, and then yeah, okay, interesting place for a home base. Home base, if
yeah,
for those folks who don't know who home base is, it's your big DIY like store, it's like, what would it be in the States, like Lowe's or something like that, or Best Buy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, B&Q or whatever equivalent you might have, Wix's
yeah,
do, yeah. So cool, excellent. So you got a bit of character, but yeah, you were talking about how the amount of green space there is in London. Of course, just refer back, folks, back to both. I spoke to Helen Illis last season, who designed the Green Ground map. So it's basically a mock-up of the London Tube network, but instead of the tube stops, you've got green stops, and you can walk. And she's designed it where you actually can go along a line and then walk from green space to green space all across London in like a kind of like connectivity integrated kind of like transport way. It's really cool. And the other shout is to Dan Raven Ellison, who was one of the people who led the London City National Park scheme to get London as the first designated national park city in the whole entire world. And one of the big selling points about it is because actually the majority of the space in London is actually green space.
Yeah.
In terms of square area. So it's true what Anne-Marie says, folks. It's actually quite a lot of green space in London, like a patchwork.
Yeah. The other thing about Catford is if you go into Catford proper, because we're on the south edge of Catford, if you see what I mean, you then have the Catford Cat. Have you seen the Catford Cat?
Okay. Is this another one I've got to look up?
Yes.
Cat.
So it's the Catford Shopping Centre, which isn't very big, and it isn't paper mache, but it looks like a giant paper mache cat. And it's been listed.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's now a listed structure.
Really? Oh wow. So yeah, you think of those times, folks, when you got a nefarious cat who's trying to grab something. You know, they kind of lean forward and they kind of like pout out with their paw. That's exactly, and it's kind of like leaning out over the Catford Centre sign, trying to look like it's trying to paw at something, with a very mischievous look on its face. But it's big.
Yeah,
it's quite big. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, there is characters
terrifying.
where I live. Yeah.
The Catford Cat statue. And I just love it that it's been listed. So that there's nothing that can be done to it now, folks. And this is mostly for our American audience, right?
Yeah.
Who are like, oh yeah, we have history that goes back 150 years. But in the United Kingdom, we have something called like graded listed buildings. You've got grade 1, grade 2, whatever like that. And it's basically, it's a level of protection that either an area or a building has. So yeah, like for example, grade 2 listed building is like you have to have like exceptionally special permission to like just even change the windows or something, to replace the windows or something like that, or to change its facade or whatever. So the fact that this cat's been given a listed status means nothing can be done to it without excessive permission. Like even if they have to repaint it just to give it a touch up, they still have to get permission.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a well looked after cat then.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can be restored using the right techniques. Not that I know what the right techniques are, although at the moment, at least, the guy who designed it, I don't know whether he made it or just he designed it. Anyway, he's still alive, so you could ask him. But because it celebrated its anniversary, I think it was last year.
Installed in 1974. So it was installed in 1974.
So it's coming up on.
So
okay.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
So next year it's going to be 50 years old.
Yeah.
Wow, the cat for cat, folks. And another thing that will make Americans chuckle as well is that they have these kind of things all over the place, all over the States, you know, like just like superfluous kind of big statues of animals. I'm thinking of look up these ones, folks. New Salem Sioux, in North Dakota, the Jamestown Buffalo. There are more. I've just suddenly have gone host brain fog, but look at least those two up, and you'll see what I mean. Oh, awesome! So what is it then? So you seem to have spoken fairly fondly about these green spaces, and yet you still call yourself rural-phobic. So come on, you're going to need to explain this one, Anne-Marie, to me.
Okay, so I have no night vision. Okay, if you don't give me artificial lighting, I cannot see. When I was in my early 20s, I was a youth group leader for a short period of time, and we went on this expedition. We weren't camping, we was in like sort of log cabins, I suppose, but it was only in like the Surrey countryside or something. It wasn't, do you know what I mean, rural, but there were no streetlights, and there was like this night hike, and I just fell down a ditch because I couldn't see anything, and I kept trying to say I can't see anything. Nobody was listening to me. And so I had to be rescued by one of the kids from the bottom of a ditch.
Oh no.
So yeah, I need street lighting. I have hay fever, so I don't
Mm,
really want to be around an awful lot of, grass, trees, flowers, without access to somewhere where I can shut windows and get away from all of that. Um, and then also, I have no sense of direction, and I mean none. I navigate by memory. My memory is good, and by landmarks. It does also mean if somebody moves a landmark, I then get lost in somewhere that I have been before. But for example, I can remember when I moved house into a completely new area. So I grew up in West London, and in Hayes. So there's two places called Hayes. One not far from where I live now. That's quite nice. And Hayes in Middlesex, which really isn't. And I grew up in a place that really isn't. Not far from Southall. And so the first time I lived in South London, I can remember going out of the front door of my flat to post a letter, and I came back 2 hours later because
ah,
that's how lost I'd got.
oh my
Um,
word.
when I read a map, if I read a map, it has to have like street names on it. I can't do it like in a field or whatever. And I always have to turn it because north, upwards, and forwards are kind of all the same thing as far as I'm concerned. So
Right.
when Google Maps occasionally changes, that I'm following Google Maps, but the arrow doesn't go forward as I step forward. If I step forward, the arrow goes, but I can't do that. Can't understand what's going on. I have very limited depth perception, hence the whole thing about forwards, up, and north all being the same thing. So basically, I'm really good at Lost, and what I need is an A to Z. If I'm going somewhere new for the first time, I usually look it up on Google Maps and then print a hard copy map and then highlight it. And then I can use that to then. I still get fairly lost if things don't look quite, do you know what I mean, as I expected them to
Yeah.
or whatever. But I usually allow time to get lost and retrace my steps. And again, if you're looking at street names, you're okay. In
Mm.
rural, it's not just that there aren't any street names. Sometimes you get a sign that says, "Thank you for driving carefully through our village." And there isn't yet a sign that says, "Welcome to." Freaks me out. I'm in nowhere. Where am I? If something
This is
happens, how
true,
does anybody
true.
find me?
This
I'm
is
not
so
in a
true.
place. I've left that one and I haven't got to the other one yet. That's just wrong. So,
Yeah, that is a fantastic observation. I've just, as someone who likes to go hiking and walking, I can completely see that. Yeah. So, but it's fascinating what you say about like you actually give yourself time to get lost.
yes,
Have
I
have you
have
like
to.
played? Have you played that to your advantage, like as a way of like discovering places, or like just saying, you know what, I might get lost. I'll just enjoy the experience of like figuring out where this place is, or do you like say, no, I need to find my way again? Have you ever taken advantage of being lost?
Um, well, no, I can't really unless I can remember how I got to where I ended up, which wasn't where I was supposed to be.
Mm.
So it can be all right if I've gone the wrong way and I've worked out how I've gone wrong and I've discovered a nice pub. And if I can work out, if I can retrace my steps again, I'm like, there's that nice pub. I'll go in that pub. Do you know what I mean? Another time,
Yeah.
but I can't now. Um, so it has, but I can't plan to. I can't work on that basis because then I'd have to plan enough time to get lost trying to find somewhere else on my way to trying to find the place I really want to go to.
Right. Yeah. So then, are you lost anymore?
So I mean,
Yeah.
because also I don't know my left from my right either. So Google says turn left
Mm.
or whatever. I can't do that. I only know my left from my right. If I hold up my hands like that, that's le for left.
So yeah, you've got that. You need that kind of visual
Yeah.
reminder almost. So I mean, I don't want to risk turning into one of my favourite podcasts, which is BBC's Digital Planet. There's a hell of a lot of geography on there, which is great, and I do recommend it to people. But it seems to me as though new tech, like for example, augmented reality, like because if with Google Maps, you can lift your smartphone up vertically when it's on Google Maps, and it will switch to augmented reality view, where it will overlay Street View with what you're seeing. Have
I
you ever come
probably
across
couldn't
that?
process that. Probably couldn't process
Is
it
that is
in the
that
same way as I
information overload?
can't see in 3D. I just see
Right.
blurry.
Interesting. But this does all
My
beg a
eyes.
really serious thing, doesn't it, with regards to accessibility to
Yeah.
places?
I
So
think
it's a really
if
serious
I
thing.
were to go somewhere rural, I would use that what 3 words, because then
Oh,
rescue teams
right.
can find you. So I would have that. I don't know whether it's an app or whether you just look it, because normally you'd need internet coverage, and when you're in rural, you don't have that either. So it's like when you get lost, you can't correct yourself because you've got no way of doing that. So I don't know how it works for you when you are in somewhere really rural with no signal. But I know
Hmm.
that in theory, you use the what 3 words app, and then a rescue team can come and find you.
That's that's fascinating. Because see, now I'm the opposite to that. I love what 3 words for kind of like the joy and the kind of the simplicity it brings, and it can, you know, is it does it go as fine scale as a meter by meter square or something? I can't quite remember,
It
but
goes remarkably. It does go remarkably detailed. So it will really,
yeah,
if you were stuck on a mountain and you could give that to rescuers, it would really help them narrow
yeah.
down their search to find you.
So yeah, and then when I but like I'm like kind of like, well, with everything else that's out there, Google Map with latitude, longitude, that kind of thing, the ordnance survey, grid squares, I'm like, well, what's the point? But then again, hearing you talk now has made me appreciate that actually converting like a location into three simple words actually can make a big difference and can make it areas more accessible. So I think I've pretty found a
Yeah.
new found appreciation for it. So right, what do you reckon what do you reckon the what 3 words for the Catford cat should be? I'll tell you what it is, but what do you reckon it
Oh,
should be?
what do I reckon it should be?
Feed me
Catford
now.
cat.
uh,
um, I want to say something like chavvy but cute.
I'm just gonna let folks who don't know what chavvy means to just look that up. Um, so, the what 3 words for the cat for cat apparently is along fingernails nearly.
Right.
So there you are, folks. Along fingernails nearly. So yeah, it's and I know somewhat 3 words. Like actually the words don't have to make any sense, folks. They're just 3 random words. But there are some places I think where actually the what 3 words like, oh, that's quite close to the bone with like what it actually is. Um so let's play a bit of game then. Right, pick any landmark. It could be something personal to you, or it could be a favorite place around the world, or maybe somewhere in Mexico that you told me that you've just recently been to. What do you think?
Oh, okay. Akumal in Mexico.
Oh crikey, how
If
do I
it
spell
wants you
that?
to be more
Acamal,
specific,
Mexico.
Half Moon Bay in Akumal.
Half moon. Ah, there you go. Right. As okay. So the what 3 words, folks, for Half Moon Bay, Acamal, Mexico is entrusts, tearless, gory.
Wow.
Any of those 3 words make many sense? Tearless. I don't know. Entrusts. Okay, interesting. See now, folks. Now you know where Anne-Marie has gone on holiday very recently. So that is
Yeah.
the Yucatan Peninsula
Yep.
on the east coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. Okay. Oh, I tell you what. Then We'll come back to Mexico, but I'll get folks to look at where New Salem Sioux in North Dakota is, right? Because since it's been mentioned, the giant cow. So New Salem, North Dakota, folks. So I need to find the what 3 words exactly for the cow. So that's New Salem itself. There's Salem Sioux. Salem Sioux. Sorry, that was poor. Um, you see, it's no cow related word in the what 3 words. Level, wealthy, certainly. Oh no. Okay, this one's a bit closer. So I'm just clicking on each of the 4 squares that are just
Yeah,
around
yeah.
Salem Sioux. Preheated Daisy brought, because Daisy's obviously a cow
Cow
name.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, green moral imagine. Relaxing courtyards mentions. But anyway, you could pick one of those folks and you'll find the New Salem Sioux, which overlooks the Interstate 94. Anyway, right, let's go back to Mexico then. Come on then. You said you didn't want to riff on it too much, but tell us a little bit about your recent trip to Mexico, because it does sound fascinating, especially your relations.
Yeah, so my sister lives in Mexico, has done for a long time now, and she's a primatologist and also a conservation biologist, and she went out there originally to study spider monkeys at Punta Laguna, um, and she looked at how some monkeys use grooming, but they use babies to sort of bond with one another. Um, and she one of the things she discovered in studying her spider monkeys that there's, bearing in mind this was now, gosh, 15 or so years ago, but it used to be a common myth that only humans could be really horrible to each other and no other animal was horrible. And she watched one
Hmm.
monkey to convince another monkey to go off away from the troop. One monkey killed the other monkey, smashed its head in, went back. Then, when all the troop were looking for the missing monkey, this murder monkey joined in with the pretend looking. And when they found the body, the monkey that had murdered the other monkey was all upset and crying as if they were innocent and hadn't done anything.
Wow. Wonder where we
Um,
get it from.
yeah, so it's not only humans who can murder.
Yeah.
Um, So that's a cheery thought. But we got to see the monkeys that the troops of monkeys that Kathy studied in Punta Laguna and swim in the lagoon as well, which is beautiful. And the monkeys are not tame, but because it's a protected area, they are not bothered by humans. So
Right.
you just stand there, you don't approach them or anything like that, and they'll just swing in the trees above you,
Hmm.
which is great. And then Kathy's main project is still with spider monkeys, but in Calakmul, um, where she's studying various their behaviours and also the environment. And she ended up becoming a conservation biologist because if she wanted to save the forest that the monkeys were in, then she needed to understand more. Do you know what I mean about the forest and then also the other animals in
Yeah.
it? And they set up camera traps and they found loads of jaguars and ocelots. Um, and then, so Operation Wallacea, which is the organisation that she works for, they have groups of secondary school students, but sort of older age, and then also university students and some postgrad students. They all go out to the same place, to Calakmul, but they study different things. But then their data all gets pulled together to be part of one massive data set, to try and understand this forest and particularly things like migratory patterns of animals, so that
Wow.
because it would be very nice to be able to tell the Mexican government, no, you can't build a road, but they want to improve the infrastructure. So it's about, okay, well, if you do want to build a road, can you not build it here and build it slightly to the left or slightly to the right? Or can you create tunnels or overpasses or something for the animals so that they can still cross from one place
Mm.
to another place? So it's about getting people sort of to work together so that, yes, you still get the infrastructure, but you've hopefully at least mitigated the damage done to the animals. And then, so they're studying that over time. But they're also working with some of the local people in the area who might potentially want to sort of make money out of loads of tourism and development, and sort of saying to them, well, is that what you want to do? Or is it just that what you want to do is actually have some money and have some income? Because there are other ways of doing things. And so they've got a whole load of them with beehives making manuka honey, which is rather lucrative.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And it gives them a decent income in a way that doesn't do any damage to the environment. And she's also worked with, because that part of Mexico is Mayan rather than Aztec or Incan or whatever. And at one point, and I don't know, it was definitely in the Yucatan, but I don't know exactly which area. The government wanted to build on the land, but actually the Mayan community owned it, and they were like, "Oh, we really don't want them building on our land. It matters to us. We don't
Mm.
want this development here. We value our land." So Kathy was like, "Well, you don't have to let them develop on it then." And this was news to them. She was like, "No, you have this and this," and so she basically went into bat for them, in terms of fighting legal battles to say, no, you're not going to build your development on this land. It matters to the Mayan people. And all along the way, she was keeping them updated and together they won. Because they had all the information that was necessary. They just didn't know how to use it and didn't understand the necessary legal processes. So she was be like,
Yeah.
okay, they're asking this question. What can you tell me about this? Right, brilliant. We can show that then. No, you and the Mayan community got to keep their land.
That is absolutely fascinating. And it just goes to, that's just another example about how, you know, kind of the hangover of colonial processes and, you know, those policy legislation which completely ignores indigenous populations, and then they take advantage of it. And it just it takes an ally like your sister to just go ahead and just say, no, actually, these are your right. This is what you should do. This is your land, and help them to make that connection. And it's just it's just such a fantastic example of empowerment, allyship, you know, and decolonizing the processes, basically. So I really need to get your, sounds like a fascinating individual. You really need to get on this podcast.
Yes, and she could talk about the monkeys in Calakmul, or she could talk about the work she's doing with mangroves that has involved her speaking before the Mexican Parliament, or she could talk about her turtle project in Akamal. And we got to swim with the turtles that she worked with. So yeah, I don't want to take up a whole podcast talking about her and her work, because what you really
Of
need is to
course.
get her on as a guest to talk about her and her work.
But I can tell how proud you are of her, though, which is amazing. And hi folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast. Simply liking, sharing, rating and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out. And you are passionate about this stuff yourself because you do have a love of geography yourself, because you have a bachelor's degree in geography yourself.
Yep.
So, and it says here that your dissertation was about the interface between belief and the environment, which is I've always found fascinating. Now, I am an atheist. I sometimes joke that I'm a born again atheist because I was raised Catholic, but I still value spirituality, faith, the things that cannot be explained, without some kind of leap of faith. And I just want to recall, I mean, I think you've heard it yourself, Anne-Marie, but I just want to remind folks that back in season 1, I had an amazing chat with the actor Adil Hussain, who you all know, Anne-Marie, played Adit Sahil in season 3 of Discovery, at the very, very beginning of the season and then the very end of the season. When, spoilers, he is made a lieutenant in Starfleet. And he retold this fantastic story of how he made this huge connection to nature, this spiritual connection to nature, when he went on this retreat in order to prepare for some role or some character for an acting job. And the thing that struck me, he said that the more he spent opining and absorbing himself in the natural environment with no technology, and he said he always used to sit next to this one tree, this really old tree, and he had this epiphany that this tree, trees in general, but this tree is his primordial grandmother, the nurturer of all things, the giver of life of all things, the provider of things. And it was just, I felt his spiritual experience through the way he told his story. And I just love that. But yeah, I'd love for you to tell us the kind of the things that you were looking at, and the kind of about between religion, belief, and the environment, because they do intertwine quite often, more often than people think. I think religion and science is more compatible than what a lot of people think.
Yeah. So I was looking primarily at the built environment, and I was interested in. So what I explored very specifically was, because this was around the time that the Church of England had decided, yes, we will let women be priests. And I was interested in the map of in South London, where I was living, where are the places that have disagreed with that decision, and what do they have in common? And I found that there was a link between there having been very deprived areas historically where um, only people from a more Catholic tradition within the Church of England, who at that time they were celibate men who came from that tradition, so they didn't have a family, and it was only people who didn't have a family who were willing to go into those areas and serve as priests in those parts of South London. And so the churches then grew up in a very specific tradition within the Church of England in those areas. And it was that tradition that said, we don't agree with your decision. And so you can map it, you can overlap a map of effectively Victorian deprivation and those churches at that time, because things have changed now, and there are definitely still some churches that don't accept the ordination of women, and some of those now are of a different tradition called evangelical. There has been some change, but back then in the mid-90s when I was looking at it, there was a clear correlation between Victorian deprivation and then those churches saying, no, we don't agree with women
That's
being priests.
fascinating.
Yeah,
That's wow. Yeah, and it's remarkable how geography, whether it's human geography or physical geography, has that much of an impact on belief systems. It could be whether women should be able to be priests, or the way that you look on how you should look at stewardship of the world. It's quite
and
remarkable.
And then the job I do now is I'm called a diocesan registry clerk. There are very few of us nationally. And I work for 2 dioceses in the Church of England. A large amount of my work doesn't have anything to do with geography, but there's a significant aspect of it which does, which is something called the faculty jurisdiction. And that is like planning permission, but for churches and for churchyards. And there you do absolutely have a link between belief and the environment, because what you believe about life and death affects what you do and don't do in a churchyard. And over time, that then affects what is in the churchyard. And there are now, for example, certain types of lichen that are only found in Church of England churchyards because they've used local stone, because it mattered to them to use local stone to make these monuments to people. And those stones have been allowed to weather because it's part of Christian belief that death is part of life. So in a Church of England churchyard, as distinct from a cemetery, you might get honed stones, but you don't get polished. So you will, over time, they will deteriorate, they will weather, they will get lichen growing on them, and it creates over time Church of England Christian belief about life after death has resulted in distinct environments in the UK.
Oh my god, that's just blown my mind. And no, it's seriously. I mean, it sounds like it's such a small thing, but because we have here we have our local. We like going for walks around our local area, and we walk through the local cemetery. It's a nice little walk. We do a loop with the kids, and we do the kind of thing. We look at the stones. We look at the the years. Like can we find like the earliest year possible, and then we look at we see things growing on the gravestones, the lichens and things like that. And I remember my first year of university as well, as for my environmental science degree, we went to Devon, and one of the things we had to do was look at weathering rates of gravestones and look at the micro ecosystems that are building on the gravestones. And now that you've said what you've said, I've now made that connection, and it's just everything that all my memories and my experiences of walking through cemeteries, going on that field trip, it's just added another layer to it, a quite profound layer. So next time we go for a walk around our local area now, that's just going to enhance my experience like tenfold. So folks, next time you go for a little walk, can you go through a churchyard or something? There you go. There's something you've not really known about.
And another example is the fact that an awful lot of churches, particularly in rural areas, but also, to be honest, around where I live now in South London, are home to bats
Yeah, yeah.
because there are restrictions on what you can and can't do to a building. So these buildings have been around in a similar condition, and if they're within a churchyard, that churchyard is
Mm,
also protected by certain legislation. So that hasn't really changed. So
yep.
you have created a consistent environment for bats. And
Hmm.
there is legislation that means if you want to do work to a church, you have to check for bats. And then if there are any, Natural England will give advice depending on where the works are happening, the time of year, and the bat species that have been discovered. But you can
Yeah,
also, there's sometimes some ingenious works, and so to get permission, like planning permission, it's called a faculty. And I've worked with a couple of churches now to get a faculty to develop almost like a sort of a bat run or a bat flap, so that the bats are diverted from the main space so that their droppings are not falling on the main church, but
yeah.
they are still living in the same place that they have always lived.
Nice. So you can work with nature. Yeah. Um, we we actually seriously considered like putting bat boxes on under the eaves of our on the outside of our house, but we were advised. A friend of mine who actually works for to do looking at planning permission and environmental impact kind of stuff like on bats and stuff like that, bat ecology and whatnot. So over here there's a massive great big controversy regarding building the northern distributor road around Norwich, and it was going to have a huge impacts on bats. And I spoke to my friend and I said, what do you think about this? Is this a good idea? I want to support bats. She said, don't do it, Kit. As much as we would like bat homes, and you don't want to do it. Your house, and going on what you just said, Anne-Marie, it's like your house will be constantly in flux. There'll be more repairs needed to it. The roof's got to be maintained. What if you move out of that house? The new owner, you might have struggle selling it, or the new owners might not want bats. But because there's a bat box and you've got bats in there, your house is now a protected area. It said you are probably will not do those bats any favors by having a bat box in there, because you could actually have bats settle in there, and then there might be an unforeseen disruption, and then there's going to be hell to pay. So she said it's better to have these bat boxes, as you just said, somewhere which is less changing or more stable. So it's not surprising that you say like a church,
Yeah,
um, or a very old listed building.
yeah.
So the other place where I know there's bat boxes is the Yorkshire Dales in Malham Tarn Field Centre. I used to take kids every year, and that building is listed building, Malham Tarn Field Centre, and they have bat boxes up there. And the reason why they can is because they can't really touch the building anyway. So
I've been in a couple of National Trust buildings as well that have got signs up saying, we have bats here. And again, it's a listed building. There's a limit to the changes that they could make at any rate. So the bats are safe. And what they've done in a couple of them is set up cameras. So you can go and watch the bats, but you're not in with the bats, if you see what I mean. You're sort of viewing them remotely.
yeah, smashing. Right, there's going to be one thing left to do before we finish off, Emery, is that spinning the beans. And you say that you're slightly obsessed with the color purple. And
Yes.
I want to know, what is it about purple that brings an obsession out in you?
It's been my favourite colour ever since I can remember. It turned out it was the colour of my school uniform when I was at primary school. And I can remember the only thing that bothered me about starting big school was I going to get to wear purple? And when I was
Right.
told, yes, you will, and then I went off in my uniform, that was it. There was no, tears, nothing like that. I was like, bye, mum, because I was wearing purple. So, that was fine. Um, I've had a couple of people speculate that possibly I don't see as much purple as other people do, because people sometimes go to me because they know I like purple. Oh, look, Amory, that's really nice. That's purple. And I look at the thing they're pointing at and I see it as blue. So
I
I've
got the
had
same problem.
other
Yeah.
people have speculated that therefore it's got rarity value for me.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
But I've always loved it. So yeah, this is my phone case, which is
Yeah, you see,
purple. I've got a purple watch.
Oh,
My
because yeah,
hair is purple. I haven't got 2 coats on yet. It's all a bit smudged, but purple nail
purple
varnish.
nail polish. Yeah.
Um, Purple glasses case. Purple
This is amazing.
glasses. I've even got purple dice for gaming.
I love it.
What else have I got that's purple? Bedroom walls are purple. Um,
Wow.
got those painted when we moved in. I am always wearing something purple. You want to be able to see it. It could be my underwear, but every day I am wearing something purple. I have various different lipsticks, but they're all various shades of purple. Same is true of all my nail varnishes. They're all either purple or lilac.
Mm.
I don't see the point of wearing any other colour.
No,
I've got
I get it.
various purple mugs. Um, yeah. My mum says
Yeah.
that I'm the easiest person to buy presents for because she goes shopping, she sees something purple, she buys it. It can be like my birthday's in November, so that's quite close to Christmas, and she will see something in like March or April, but she'll be like, "Yeah, I'll get that for Anne-Marie. It can be form part of her birthday present or Christmas present because it's purple, so she'll like it."
Love it. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from though, because I'm the same way when it comes to foxes. I've got fox everything. You know, I'm wearing my fox pajamas right now. I've got fox onesie. I've got fox jewelry. You know, I've got a little tiny cuddly fox right here. I've got fox on my badges. You know, so yeah, and my bloody name is to do with foxes as well. So you know, so I get it. I get it. I'm gonna right. I'm gonna really clutch at straws here, stuff like that. But do you therefore find and this is a Star Trek reference, everybody, in case you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about. Do you therefore find the Jem'Hadar battleships quite visually appealing then, bearing in mind they've got purple nacelles?
Yeah. In fact, I play Star Trek Attack Wing, and I play Klingons because I'm naturally loud,
Yeah, you've
shouty.
got a batleth on your wall behind you,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
a Klingon double-handed sword, basically.
yeah. So my favourite alien race is the Klingons, so I play as the Klingons, and my husband was playing Federation, and then we had friends who played as Romulans or whatever, and then they brought out the Dominion fleet. Alongside the Cardassians. The Cardassian ships are sort of brown, but then I was like, I'm sitting there and there's my husband playing with the purple ships. I'm like, no, they should be my ships. What are you doing with the purple ships? Because the Klingon ships are all
Yeah,
green. But they are
yeah.
pretty to look at while I'm blowing them up. Um, but yeah. Yeah, I was always what was the character called? I can't remember. Professor Plum when we played Cluedo.
Professor, I'm always Miss Scarlet.
Yeah.
um, isn't the USS Protostars like not necessarily the nacelles purple, but like when you see it streak away, it's like I'm
Yeah.
sure they're purple as well. Which makes it quite aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, I can understand how purple can be. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I'm sold. I'm sold.
Cool.
Oh well, this has been a lovely chat, Anne-Marie. Just me and you. No Andy to kind of interject. Bless him. We love you, Andy. Thanks for getting us in touch and everything, mate. We do appreciate that. So we're going to finish off with We Are All Geographers, linking you to our previous guests. So last week, I spoke to a friend of mine, Zoe Johnson, who's she is still a meteorologist. She'll always be a meteorologist, but now she's trained to be a broadcast journalist.
Cool.
But because of her absolute love for the weather and climate, when I asked her for a word to come up with a word that she wants you to link to geography in 30 seconds, I mean, I don't know how. She just said clouds. So she wasn't like, oh, I don't want to come up with something really hard or something really profound. I'm just like, I just love clouds. It's going to be
Okay.
clouds. So Anne-Marie, all you got to do is talk about clouds for 30 seconds. Think you can do it?
Okay, fair enough.
So whenever you're ready, you can
Yeah.
speak about clouds for 30 seconds.
Okay. I've been one of those people who likes lying on the on the ground, looking up at the clouds and seeing what shapes I can see. I always try and see the Starship Enterprise, but I've never quite managed it yet. Most things are sort of a vaguely amorphous blob and a smiley face if you're lucky. When I was flying to and from Mexico, I really appreciated being above the clouds and looking at them in a different angle. And I really like the wispy ones. I kind of feel like they're a bit like cotton wool, or maybe candy floss, and you can eat them.
Oh, cirrus clouds referring to, the cirrus clouds, the wispy ice crystal ice ones up in the upper troposphere. Yeah, I love the cirrus clouds. They're really nice too. Cool. That was dead on 30 seconds. Well done. So you need to now look for a cloud that's shaped like this then.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find, the Enterprise D. Yeah, you can find the saucer. That's quite easy. It's the nacelles that are more difficult.
Yeah. So folks, I'm just holding in my model Enterprise D, which is about, if I lay it from fingertips to, so it goes up to almost my elbow, but not quite. It's that big. So yeah, love it. The kids get hold of it and they break in the cells. So it's like cause and effect over and over again. What word would you like to come up with, Rich, for our next guest, whoever that may be?
Can I be cheeky and say Star Trek?
Yeah. Well, I'm up for that. Let's go for Star Trek. They might be like, it'd be so awesome if they didn't want anything to do with Star Trek and they've got to talk about it for 30 seconds. That's just like the best thing ever. Yep. We'll do that then. Right. So apart from the wonderful Andy, is there anybody else you would love to give a shout out to? And your sister, of course.
Yes, Kathy. I'll give a shout out to Peter, my husband, because we do the BOrgCast together. We watch Star Trek together, and drink beer together.
And coffee, but not necessarily at the same time.
Well, he doesn't drink coffee.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't like coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker in the morning. I have a pint of coffee before I leave the house. I've got a pint mug and it's got Grumpy on it from the Seven Dwarfs. And it says,
I love it.
It says something like, "Do not engage, do not ask stupid questions, do not expect a polite answer." And then I then have a travel mug of coffee to then drink on my journey into work, and then I make myself coffee when I get to work.
My goodness.
I drink rather a lot of it, but then stop at lunchtime, and then I don't have any caffeine after lunch because I'm not good at mornings. But in terms of other shout outs, I'd like to give a shout out to Jim Moon, who does the Hypnagoria podcast. He does a number of different streams. So he does stuff on weird fiction, but he also does a lot on folklore, and there's an overlap frequently between folklore and the environment. So listeners to your podcast may find some of his podcasts of interest and worth a listen.
Awesome. Thank you much for that. Brilliant. And you've got the BOrgCast, where people can listen to you and get in touch with you. But is there any other way folks can get in touch with you? I guess because you have a Mastodon account, I believe.
I do. Now this is where can I find it to read it out? I never know what one's called. I know it's BOrgCast Ammo, but then it's at something. At geekdom.social. I think.
BOrgCast Ammo at geekdom.social.
And I'm also on Facebook, just as me, as Anne-Marie Organ, if people want to find me there.
Amazing. Brilliant. Well, Anne-Marie, that's it's been absolutely delightful speaking to you. And yeah, just looking forward to the next time we chat, whether it is we'll geek out over sci-fi, Star Trek or whatever, or we take the mickey out of Andy again. Whatever it is, I know we're going to have a lot of fun. Thanks a lot, Anne-Marie.
You're welcome. It's been fun. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.